Hey guys, it's Alana, and welcome back for another episode of Seeing Other People. So, I've been thinking a lot, and one of the things that I love the most about seeing other people and about recording these episodes and about talking to all of you is hearing from guests and hearing from listeners who have actually come out the other end of facing the things that they've faced, whether it is dating anxiety, whether it is getting over heartbreak or getting past somebody who really hurt them or getting out of an unhealthy relationship or a toxic relationship. I think it's just so incredible watching and hearing all of you really conquer these things and get through them, because I know how difficult they are in the moment and how much stronger we are for going through them. So I just want to say to everyone who's gone through something, who has kind of gotten through something since beginning to listen to Seeing Other People, just know that I'm so proud of you. And even if you haven't expressed to me what you've been facing, I'm still proud of you. And I know you're out there. And for those who have messaged, DM'd, emailed, come on the podcast to share what you've dealt with and how you overcame it, I think about you guys all the time. And it warms my heart and makes me so happy. And I feel so special to be able to hear from you and to hear and share some of your stories. And today's guest is absolutely no exception to that. I am bringing on Kevin Nahai, who is a speaker and coach who focuses on dating and relationships and anxiety management and confidence. And he himself has an incredible story about something that he went through and how it ended up getting him to this place in his life where he is actually helping others get through what they're struggling with. And I love hearing stories like that. I think it is so beautiful. And Kevin has such amazing expert wisdom and advice and so many great tips for how we can really get into healthy relationships and figure out what relationships we're in that aren't healthy, and finding ways to be less anxious in our relationships, or figure out if anxiety is coming from us or from the person that we're dating. So I'm super excited for this episode. There's a lot that we're going to talk about that I know is really going to hit home for a bunch of you listening. So get ready. Let's bring Kevin in to the episode. All right. And we are here with the wonderful Kevin Nahai. Kevin, welcome to Seeing Other People.
Thank you so much, Ilana. I'm only seeing you right now, much to your boyfriend's chagrin. Sorry, boyfriend. But I'm not seeing other people. I'm seeing Ilana across from my computer here. So,
and I'm seeing Kevin. So that's the way we do this here. Well, Kevin, I'm super excited to have you here. I can't wait for our conversation and for all the topics we're going to discuss. This is going to be a really great episode. Why don't you introduce yourself and who you are, a little bit of your backstory and what you do to the Seeing Other People family?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me on. So my name's Kevin Nahai. I'm a public speaker and a personal coach from Los Angeles, and I live in LA currently. And I work on 4 areas with people. 1 is dating and relationships. 2 is anxiety, depression. 3 is self-esteem and confidence. And 4 is helping people figure out what they want to do with their lives. Now, each one of these areas is its own bucket, but it's also they're all very related to each other, especially the first 3, the anxiety, the confidence, and the dating. And, I always like to say that people don't really listen to anything I have to say until I start talking about dating and relationships. And that's when all of the eyes turn and they're like, oh, I want to hear about that. So, basically the reason I work on these 4 areas is that these are the 4 areas in my own life where I struggled immensely. When I was 19, I was diagnosed with a chronic disease, and I fell into a very deep depression. I became severely anorexic. I became suicidal. And my organs were failing, and I couldn't get out of bed, and I just had all kinds of mental and emotional trauma that hit me like a truck out of nowhere. And I had no hope, no confidence, no direction. Relationships with women were out of the question at the time that I was really sick. But I started to get a little bit better and a little healthier. And when I was 21, I had my first real relationship, and it was a pretty successful and healthy relationship, except that what I realized was that I was not really healthy or ready to be in a relationship. And I discovered that I had a lot of abandonment issues, and I had a lot of sort of unresolved emotional injuries from, when I was a kid and my attachment to my parents and stuff like that. And after that relationship ended, I went through a series of pretty toxic, dysfunctional relationships. I sort of spiraled until I decided, that I have to get control of this and I have to figure out why I keep bringing these unhealthy people into my life and, what I need to do differently. And, the last thing I'll say is that of everything I've been through, the reason I'm so passionate about helping people with their dating lives is that of everything I've been through, from anorexia to suicide to depression to chronic disease, there was nothing more painful than the pain of feeling unlovable and feeling lost in my relationships and feeling like I don't have any light at the tunnel when it comes to women and dating. And, now I have an amazing dating life. I have tremendous relationships with women. I know exactly what I'm looking for. And over the course of the last 3 years, I've coached 97 women who were all single between the ages of 28 and 38. And 91 of them are all either married, engaged, or in successful relationships. So
Wow.
If they can do it, and if I can do it, anybody can do it.
And if I can do it, everyone who's listening for the most part knows that I struggled with a lot of the things that you just mentioned. And I definitely can relate to feeling completely hopeless and unlovable. And the number of times I thought like there's something wrong with me, like I must be crazy. I don't understand why like everyone around me can do it, but I can't, like nobody wants to be with me. It's the worst feeling in the world. It truly is. And I love that. I feel like so many people who end up working in this field come from having had those experiences and pulling themselves out of it. And of course, it doesn't happen overnight, but it's just so inspiring to see people like yourself who have turned things around and then gone on to help other people. And I mean, the fact that all of those people are now like in healthy, positive relationships that's incredible. So definitely kudos to you.
It's a really delicate balance when you say, I felt like there was you said you felt like there was so much that was wrong with you and maybe you are crazy and stuff. Mm-hmm. And the answer to that conundrum is, in truth, maybe there is something wrong with you and maybe you are crazy, right? But that's not irreparable damage. Those are not insurmountable obstacles. And in our dating lives, when we're noticing our patterns that could be considered crazy, right? Or when we're noticing the things about ourselves that could be considered quote unquote wrong with us, it's a delicate balancing act because the solution to 50% of our dating problems is self-help, which is overcoming your obstacles, healing your own wounds, behaving better, choosing better partners, working with a professional. That's the solution to 50% of it. The solution to the other 50% is self-acceptance, which is understanding your individual emotional constitution and understanding who you are and what's going to work for you and accepting that that's probably not going to change. And the worst mistake we make is that we neither help ourselves nor accept ourselves. Mm-hmm. Because when you're coming home and you're saying, I'm crazy and what's wrong with me, there could be things that are wrong with you and you could be a little bit crazy. But in that situation, you're neither accepting those quirks about yourself nor actually doing anything to improve them. And so we get stuck in analysis paralysis. We get stuck in, this overthinking negative feedback loop where now you're neither accepting who you are and working with it, nor improving the parts of yourself that you've noticed you want to change. Mm-hmm. And it's really not like all one or the other. It's not you have to accept 100% of who you are because then you never grow. And it's also not you have to change 100% of who you are because that's not possible. And, you shouldn't change 100% of who you are, especially not to match somebody else.
Yeah. One question I do have listening to your story, you mentioned that after you were in this healthy relationship at 21, you realized that there were things that you needed to work on, things from your past, things from your childhood. I feel like that's such a young age to be able to look within and recognize those things. So I'm wondering if something led you to that recognition or if that was something you actually realized in hindsight. Because I feel like a lot of people have not really done that work to look within, and it's the place that you do need to start at.
It's 100% the place you need to start at. So while I was in it, I knew that something was wrong, but I didn't know what the things were. So it's in hindsight that I can point back at myself and say, that was attachment issues, that was anxiety, that was abandonment terror, that was, jealousy, et cetera, right? I can label them, I can name them, I can analyze them, and I know how to avoid the mistakes. Now, some people never even get to the place where they're willing to look at themselves in hindsight, right? And that's how they stay stuck where they are, dating the same person over and over again, just wearing a different outfit, or with a different haircut. It's because they don't actually look at their own patterns. But while I was in it, I did have the presence of mind that something was off. And I didn't know what it was, but most people, Ilana, in their relationships, they know when their behavior is off. They know when they're acting too avoidant. They know when they're acting too clingy. They know when their anxiety is getting the best of them. They may not be able to name it. They may not be able to diagnose it, but we're smart enough to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, okay, the way I'm behaving is kind of not normal. I don't have control over it. I'm so anxious that this is the only thing I feel like I can do, and like you said on your Instagram story, no relationship has ever ended over a double text, which is such a great line. And everyone knows that, right? They know instinctually, intellectually, if I double text or don't, it's really not going to matter. So it's a complete waste of time that I'm overanalyzing this. They're self-aware enough to know that what they're doing is like they're going way too far with their overthinking. But in the moment, you don't really know how to do anything else until you start practicing different habits. So that's why in that relationship, I was aware that things were off, but I was still perpetuating the behaviors.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, I totally I feel the anxiety that I felt in those moments of I want to send the text, but is that going to push them away and make them think I'm needy or what, but they haven't texted me back yet. Maybe they're waiting an hour. So then I'm going to have to wait 2 hours. And we overthink and to the point where we can't think about anything else.
The thing, I have a whole talk about the word needy and the myths of being needy and all of that stuff.
Yeah, I have a line that I say where it's I'm not needy, I just have needs. And one of those needs might be getting a text back at some point or knowing what someone's thinking. And that's okay. And we all have things that I think that we need in order to feel more comfortable. And I think that's totally okay. But it's realizing that you're going to have questions and you're going to want answers. And it's not crazy to want somebody to confirm a date the morning of, or to want to get that text back the next day after a date that they had a good time.
Absolutely not. It's
in the moment, it's just
The crazy thing is the state we've gotten to, which is pretending that those things aren't normal, or pretending that. I mean, the real hysteria is not I want a little bit of reassurance, or I want communication, or I want to confirm a date. There's nothing crazy about that. That's very normal. What's crazy is pretending that those things aren't normal, or that there's something wrong with you if you want reassurance or validation or confirmation. I mean, we're all human beings. And this whole idea in the self-help, in the current self-help generation of you have to be 100% okay on your own, and you can't rely on other people's validation or their reassurance or whatever, that's just pure unadulterated crap. It has absolutely no basis in anything scientific. It actually completely disavows what we know about human beings, which is that we are a tribe species that need to function together.
Mm-hmm.
And if we really truly adopted that attitude of being perfect on your own before inviting into, a relationship, then that would be the decline of civilization, because nobody would ever need a partner, and then we wouldn't have children, and then we would basically all die like the dinosaurs. And it all starts from something as minute as I can't double text, or I can't communicate, or I can't ask for reassurance, right?
Yeah.
That mentality, if you take that all the way to its logical conclusion, is you end up alone, so does everybody else, and then that's the decline of humanity. And it doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but I mean, that's as far as you can take it. And it's absolutely crazy that these very basic things that we need in our dating lives, we're acting like there's something wrong with them.
Yeah. When and why do you think this all started? Like, why did this become such a thing? And why have we all gotten so in our heads about needing the things that we need, that we should need and we should want and we should be able to just get,
Well, I think a lot of it started with this totally nonsensical idea that you're supposed to be perfect on your own. What I always say is that it's not about being perfect on your own. It's about making sure your airplane is safe enough to fly, right? So if your airplane clearly has a broken wing or a gas leak, you do not want to invite somebody else onto it, because you wouldn't step onto someone else's airplane if you saw that it had a gas leak or a broken wing. But your airplane doesn't have to be decked out in gold and diamonds with champagne everywhere. It doesn't have to be perfect before you can take on passengers. It never will be. It just has to be safe enough to fly, and then one person is the pilot and one person is the co-pilot, and you are a team and you work together and you navigate safely to your destination. And so I think that that's a big myth that was perpetuated. I think that the other big myth that has been perpetuated is the lie of career versus parenthood, and the lie of career versus relationship. So you're 25?
27.
27. Okay, I'm 29. So in our parents' generation, Ilana, the message that most of them received and lived by was find a good partner, start a family, and then you'll figure out your careers and your finances together. Okay. The message that people in our generation have received and have lived by is go make money, start your career, establish yourself, make a name for yourself, be an Instagram model, have 10,000 followers, blah, blah, blah. And then maybe one day when you're 35, you can start thinking about having a partner. That's basically the way that we've interpreted and lived that message. And we've been fed this lie that having a career and having money is more important and more fulfilling than having a relationship, starting a family, doing those things with our partner. And we've also, severely been impacted by everything that we see on the internet and all of these really unrealistic ideals of money, fame, and fortune and glamour that we're supposed to live up to. And we've been taught that relationships and family is, comes secondary to those things. And I think that that's just what that's done is it's reduced because people place less importance on relationships until later in their lives. Then when they get to that stage, they get really anxious because they don't really know what to do. Mm-hmm. And it feels like they're losing a race. And, now it's like, oh my God, I'm behind.
Yeah. So, do you think that this is kind of what has led to so many people like having that whole like fear of commitment and not knowing if the person that they like and the person that they're dating is the person they should settle down with, or that it's like maybe too soon? Like I know, and I've expressed this a few times before on different episodes, like I dated a bunch of guys who were the same type of guy. They all worked in the music industry and the entertainment industry, and they all were like part of the school of thought that they could not have an actual relationship until they absolutely like succeeded, got to the top of their field, crushed it in their career. And I'm like, why wouldn't you want to like do that and have someone support you along the way? Like I got into relationships with people who were like, I shouldn't be in a relationship right now. I told myself I was never going to have a girlfriend right now. And it's like, right. Well, here we are. Like, what?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that I lived by that message for a long time because that's the message that I grew up with. And you may be a rare breed, by the way, that you wanted to be in relationships and you wanted to support someone who wasn't fully established yet,
Hmm.
because a lot of women that I'm friends with, I mean, men too, of course, but a lot of women that I'm friends with and women that I work with, they don't come from that school of thought. The school of thought that they come from is that they need to be totally established, and their career as a lawyer or a doctor or a PA or an engineer or whatever they're doing is really important. And they are actually spending a lot of their time pursuing their ambitions and dreams and careers, which is all well and good, but they're
Yeah.
doing it at the expense of a relationship. And so of course they have commitment issues,
Right.
just like the guys do. So, it's great to make money, it's great to have a career, it's great to be established, but none of that stuff is going to make you emotionally prepared for commitment and for a relationship.
Yeah.
So, we want to work on those two things in tandem. We want to simultaneously establish ourselves, our lives, our career, and create, successful lives for ourselves, and learn how to survive and cope in the very weird dating world, and have healthy, functional relationships, and not wait until we're 30 to start thinking about that. Um, of course, there's also the advent of dating apps, which seems like a low hanging fruit, but that has also ushered in a new era of being non-committal. Um,
Right.
the best way to start practicing being more ready for a relationship is to date one person at a time, literally. If you're going to go on one or two or three dates, even if it's only 3 dates with someone, if you like them enough to go on 1, 2, or 3 dates with them, that's the person you're seeing.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work out, you move on to the next one, right? But what we've done with these dating apps is there's a thing in consumer psychology called the paradox of choice. And
Right.
what it says, okay, I'm sure people have talked to you about this before, but what it says is the more choices we have at any one time, the less satisfied we are with the choice we eventually make.
Mm.
And with these dating apps, we're constantly comparing everyone to everyone. We don't have to develop the social and emotional skills to talk to people at a party and learn how to communicate with them and have a successful date with them, because you can just do it online. And if
Yeah.
that person doesn't work out, doesn't matter, because you're dating 11 other people at the same time, right?
Right. And even if those 11 don't work out, then you can easily get 11 more.
Exactly.
Yep.
Especially if you're attractive, right? Now, think about this for somebody who is ugly or overweight or something like that. They don't have those options, but they also don't have, the dating sort of skills to be able to navigate this.
Right.
So the best thing that you can do is, like, just to start practicing being less of a commitment phobe and, being more ready, is challenge yourself to date only one person at a time.
Yeah, I think we'd all be so much better for that. And I also think we'd all be less anxious if that was the rule that everybody went by, if that was what people actually put into practice. Because I know a huge factor of a lot of people's dating anxiety is like those first few dates when you start to develop feelings for someone, when you start to see like that maybe you want to pursue something with somebody, you have no idea if they're only seeing you or if they're actually seeing a bunch of other people. Like you have no idea what's going on in their heads. And sometimes that makes us even more afraid to tell somebody like, I like you, or to say, I don't want to see anyone else, because we're so afraid of what their response is going to be. So then we don't say anything at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, everything you're wondering can be answered with a 3-minute conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Every question you have can be answered with a 3-minute conversation. Now, let me be clear. You may not get the answer you want, and you may get no answer. But the answer you want and no answer are still an answer.
Yep.
Right? So we drive ourselves absolutely batshit crazy, excuse my language, trying to read minds rather than having a very simple, straightforward 3-minute conversation. Doesn't have to be a fight, doesn't have to be an argument. Conversation is not confrontation, right? But you sit down, third date with someone, hey, just want to let you know that I am the type of person who likes to date only one person at a time so I can really focus my energy and effort. I'm not asking you to walk down the aisle with me tomorrow, but what's your MO? I'm going to say, well, I'm flattered and I appreciate that, but at this point I feel like I need to keep my options open, and I don't really feel comfortable dating one person at a time. Great. You got your answer. You have information. Now you know where they're at, and now you can make decisions accordingly. Or they can say, well, it's pretty early on for us, but I'm definitely the same type of person. I like to date one person at a time, so my energy and attention are focused on them. And I'm really glad we had that conversation. Perfect. Now you have information. Let's talk about what we're going to order.
Right.
I love pasta at this place. And think about how many hours you spent going over that question in your head rather than the 35 or 40 seconds in which you posed the question and then you got an answer. It's so disproportionate. So the more of those little 3-minute conversations you can have, just checking in. Here's how I feel. What are your thoughts on this? It's not a big deal at all. And if someone thinks it's a big deal and they freak out and they run away or you push them away, believe me, you're getting your answer sooner rather than later because that was coming.
Yeah. Or they're not ready for a relationship, or they're somebody who can't communicate like that. And ultimately the relationship would not work out because of that. Like they're not ready. They have work to do.
That's exactly what I'm saying. You're seeing that they're not ready sooner. And then, as you like to say, you can delete their number and find someone who is.
Yes. Okay, wait, but question. So let's say I said that to somebody I'm on a third date with, like, I only like to date one person at a time. I want to see where this goes with us. And they were like, yeah, I still want to see where this goes with us. I'm enjoying this, but like, I still am seeing other people, or I'm not ready to like fully commit yet. Yes, that answer is totally okay. And of course, that's always an option. But how can I then go back and feel comfortable or feel like not so out of my mind anxious about what their answer is? Because then in my head, I know I would go home, and then anytime they don't answer my text immediately, I'd be like, oh my God, maybe they're on a date with somebody else. Mm-hmm. Like, how do you actually manage that anxiety in that situation once you hear their answer? Or of course, like if you haven't asked and you're not sure, What's that I just heard? Was that the sound of a relative asking, why are you still single? Oof. Yeah, the holidays are coming up. It's going to be a lot of family time. You probably want a plus one with you, so that mainly so you can avoid those questions, but also so that you can have a partner and be happy, and hopefully they're the person that you've been looking for. And it's cuffing season. It's time to focus on figuring out what you want and really going for it. My favorite way to focus is with Mindset Wellness CBD's Focus Gummies. They are organic, they're non-GMO, they're gluten-free, vegan, and they taste amazing. Get yours today, mindsetwellness.com.
Yeah. So, okay, if you haven't asked, then your anxiety is unfounded, right? Your anxiety is not rooted in anything other than
you're making stories up in your head.
Exactly. Other than, so you don't get to be anxious. You don't have a right to be anxious and torture yourself until you've asked, right? Now, we all, of course, when I say you don't have a right to be anxious, like we all get anxious, but I'm trying to help people with their anxiety because I had to learn this lesson myself. So, if you're anxious, ask, communicate. You're going to get an answer, and then it will either mitigate your anxiety or it will make your anxiety worse. Okay. If the answer makes your anxiety worse, then that's a very good indicator for you that this relationship is probably not going to make you feel safe and secure. How do you predict the future with someone you're dating? You look at their behavior right now. Okay. We don't have a crystal ball. We're not clairvoyants. So the most reliable predictor we have of the future is to look at a person's behavior right now. Look at who they are and what they do and what they say right now, and then see how that registers with you. Now, I could have a conversation with a girl and I could say to her, I only like to date one person at a time. And she says, I respect that. That's cool. That's not really my style.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I could be totally okay with that. I can respect that. That doesn't make me anxious. I don't mind. On the other hand, me personally, speaking as Kevin, right? If a girl says that to me, A, I don't respect it, and B, it makes me very anxious. So now what we're talking about is my personal values and my emotional constitution, my needs. Okay.
Yeah.
So what I know when I hear that is, okay, that makes me anxious. It makes me feel unsafe. I'm not going to create a torturous situation for myself in which I go home and every time I text her that she's not responding, I'm wondering if she's on a date with someone else. That doesn't feel good to me. I don't want to do that, Ilana. So when you ask me, what do I do with that situation? Well, if it makes you really anxious, that's not the last fish in the sea, and a relationship and getting to know someone is supposed to enhance your life. It's not supposed to make it worse. It's not supposed to make you anxious. You'll hear a lot of people say you have to fight for your relationship. You have to fight for the person you're dating. Well, I have news for you. A relationship is not a battleground, and the only time you should be fighting for something or you should be inordinately anxious about it is if you've been married for several years, there's, God forbid, an issue with the children, there's, God forbid, an issue with the finances, there's been infidelity, and now you have to figure out those are extreme circumstances where, yeah, you're going to be anxious and you have to decide if you want to fight for it. And, you got to go to couples therapy and all that kind of stuff. But we're talking about 3 dates or 3 weeks or 3 months in. Why would you sit there and torture yourself if you're not on the same page with someone or if your dating values don't align with them?
Yeah.
So the short answer is, if that's what they say to you and you're cool with it, you've expressed the way you operate and you're cool with the way they operate, then proceed with confidence. If you express yourself and the answer they give you makes you more anxious than you already were, that is probably a good predictor of how you're going to feel in the relationship. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I've seen that with my friends. I've seen that with myself, and even with some of the listeners who reach out to me about what they're going through. And it really is so true. And I'm really glad you brought all of those points up. One question I have for you is, when you're feeling really anxious in a dating situation, how do you know if that anxiety is coming from your own anxiety or if it's coming from you with this person? Because I know myself, I've dated a lot of people who have made me feel incredibly anxious and who have brought out so much anxiety. But I also know that I have anxiety from past dating experiences. So I've had people cheat on me. I've had people manipulate me and gaslight me, and like every type of negative, toxic dating experience you could have had, I had. So I definitely have a lot of like PTSD and things I carry with me, so that when I see somebody acting a certain way or like saying something or not saying something, that does make me anxious. But is that them or is that me?
Okay. This is an amazing question. And this question actually ruined one of my relationships, a relationship that otherwise could have been pretty happy and successful. But I was such an anxious mess. And I could not figure out if it was about her and something she was doing and things she was saying and her way of communicating, or if it was just me and my anxiety, and eventually it just got to be so much that I had to leave the relationship. And when I left the relationship, this girl was like, well, why? Like, we don't fight. Our relationship is happy on paper. Everything seems good. And I'm like, I know. And I don't know. I can't say that you're doing something wrong, but I'm just so anxious in this relationship all the time. And so after I had this experience, I struggled with this question for like 3 years. And I, read a ton of books, and I, asked my clients their experiences, and I tried to go back and think about my other experiences. And so the answer to the question of how does this happen, is it your anxiety or is it something that they're doing, is a bit of a chicken and the egg situation. it's very difficult to pinpoint where the anxiety starts.
Mm-hmm.
Are you anxious because they're not communicating? Or are they not communicating because they sense your anxiety? And then that makes it worse, right? So it's hard to pinpoint, is it their behavior or is it your anxiety? And it's hard to figure out exactly like where that starts.
Mm-hmm.
As you said, you've been cheated on before, you've had negative experiences before. Are you bringing that stuff into your current relationship and that could be affecting it? Or is it just not the right fit?
Right.
Or a combination of both. So that, finding the origin is really hard, but it's not nearly as important as finding the solution.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the solution. Pay attention to how you feel when you are apart from your partner or the person you're dating, more than you pay attention to how you feel when you are together. If when you're together, you're anxious with them, it's not the right match, right? Because when you're together, you should be having a great time, okay?
Yeah.
If when you're together, you're having a great time, you're eating, you're laughing, you're cuddling, you're sharing great stories, but then when you leave, you're anxious, you're overthinking, you're stuck in your own head, etc., chances are that's a relationship in which you do not feel safe and comfortable and something is missing. Now, as I said earlier,
I thought you were going to say the opposite, actually. I thought you were going to say then like that's your own anxiety and it's nothing to do with the relationship.
no,
Wow. Okay. Keep going.
that's what I thought it was.
Yeah.
I used to think that way.
Yeah. Same. No. Okay, cool. Keep going.
Okay. If you're in a relationship and when you're together, when you're physically together, everything is great. You're having good conversations. Your values are aligned. Your communication is aligned. You're enjoying your activities together. You're not fighting. Your personality traits complement each other. But you walk away from that relationship and now you're wondering, when's he going to text me? He said he'd call me at 8 p.m. Will he do that? You're waiting for the other shoe to drop. You feel like the rug could be pulled out from under you at any moment. That is a very strong indication that something in that relationship isn't right, that something in the relationship is making you feel unsafe. It could be your intuition telling you, hey, this person's going to hurt you. It's not the right fit. It could be the fact that in the back of your mind, you know your family won't accept them. It could be this one thing that they said or these 3 or 4 things that they've said that sort of rubbed you the wrong way, but you went over them. It could be the fact that when you're apart, your communication isn't very good. So the first thing you need to do is have a conversation with them and try to sort out why you feel anxious when you're apart from them. But if you continue to feel anxious when you are apart from them, even after you've had those conversations, your values are aligned. Your communication style seems to be aligned when you're together. You're having all of this fun when you're together. Everything seems good when you're together. But as soon as you step away, you feel anxious and unsafe and insecure. Well, that doesn't make any sense, right? So,
Right.
As I said, it could be your anxiety. It could be that something's wrong. It's hard to trace back what the exact origin point is, but it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
A relationship is supposed to enhance your life, not make you more anxious and make it worse. So that's an indication. If you leave your time together and you feel like an anxious mess, that's an indication that it's not the right fit.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the right match. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it's interesting because I do a lot of reflecting on my relationships and in the past and my current relationship now. And I don't know if it's that I did a lot of like internal work and worked through a lot of my dating anxiety, or if it's that with my now boyfriend, Jake, that our relationship just is really healthy. But he's, I think, the first person I've ever dated in my life where I have felt no anxiety whatsoever. And I think from the beginning, he was incredibly communicative. Like he texted me right after the date that he had a great time, wanted to see me again. After the second date, he said the same thing. He brought up being exclusive, like almost before I even would have like thought about it. And so for me, I think I always knew exactly where his head was at. So I didn't start overthinking anything. I didn't start like creating all of these stories in my head about where he was, what he was doing, what he was thinking. And so I've always wondered, like, is that because I was in a better place when I met him? Or is that just because I feel safe with him? And I think from this conversation, I think it is like actually the latter, because I like, even right before that, I was like going on dates with somebody else and I was going crazy over if he had a good time on our date or if he was going to text me back. And it felt terrible. And
you probably are in a better place right now because you're talking to all these experts about dating and anxiety
right.
and confidence. And, you've also done a lot of your own internal work. And remember, your airplane has to be safe enough to fly.
Right.
So you have to manage your anxiety enough that you can make this distinction between, is it me? Like, am I acting totally nuts? Do I need to go back to the therapy office?
Right.
Or is it just that I don't feel safe with this person? So yeah, I'm assuming that a person has a baseline level of like self-awareness. Yeah. But listen, I'm in the same situation. I am an anxious person. And, when girls don't text me back, when I like them, when I have to play guessing games, I turn into a little boy. I turn into a mess, you can put me in front of 20, 200 or 2,000 or 20,000 people speaking on a stage. I don't have an ounce of anxiety. But if I like a girl and she's not texting me back, I turn into an anxious mess.
Yep.
Okay? The woman that I'm dating now, who's wonderful, not once have I ever had to question if she was going to text me back. Not once have I had to question if when we had plans, we were going to go through with them. There was one day when she was in Malibu with her girlfriend and she couldn't talk to me for like 3 or 4 hours because she didn't have service there. And it made me a little anxious. So after the date, after she got back from her date with her friend, I told her, hey, listen, next time, if you think you're going to be, you're not going to have service for like 4 or 5 hours, will you just let me know so that so I'm aware and I don't have to worry that you're mad at me or I don't have to worry that anything happened to you. And she was like, oh yeah, of course, babe, no problem. And now whenever she goes into work, she just texts me, hey, I'm going to be at work. I'll check in with you on my lunch break. Or, hey, it's going to be a really busy shift. I probably won't be able to chat, until tonight, but I'm thinking of you and can't wait to see you.
Yep.
Completely, makes me feel safe and secure. And we both have very busy schedules, so I don't get to see her as often as I would like, but I'm not anxious in the time that I'm apart from her because it's the right fit. Yeah. And there's that feeling of reassurance, safety, and communication going both ways like there is with you and Jake.
Right. Yeah. And that's also, I'm happy for both of us. That's great to hear. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, it's sometimes that reassurance. And I know I've talked to my friends about this all the time where it's like, why can't like if more people would just say like, I'm going to be super busy at work, but I'll text you later. Or like, I'm going out with friends tonight. We're going to put our phones down, but like, I can't wait to see you tomorrow. It's like those little things make such a difference to people who are anxious. Which
they make the biggest difference. And
it's crazy.
It has to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So if you're not getting that, ask for it.
Yeah.
Because, the person sitting across the table from you, they don't know what you need.
Yeah.
Ask them for what you need. And if they're incapable of giving it to you, you will see that very quickly. And once you see that, then you bounce, or ask them for what you need and they'll be like, sure, thank you for telling me that. And then they'll do it and it'll completely quell your anxiety,
Yeah.
And yes, people need to have a self-soothing mechanism. You can't rely 100% on the other person to soothe you, but assuming you have a baseline of self-awareness and assuming you've done some good work on yourself, you can be the most secure person in the world. The wrong person's gonna make you feel anxious. So it's a two-way street. You need a little bit of reassurance and communication from them. And you also need to be able to soothe yourself a little bit in those moments where you're having a hard time. But don't put it all on them. And certainly do not put it all on yourself, because we are human beings and we are needy and we do have needs. And, we all need validation, love, reassurance. It comes in different forms, but the expectation that you don't need those things and that you shouldn't ask for those things is completely absurd.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Sometimes when we're dating, we're not actively thinking about what do we want out of this? What can we do to be better daters? And hopefully, if you're listening to Seeing Other People, you are starting to think about it. But start to think about your pre-date playlist. How can you pump yourself up? How can you get into the right mindset to find your person? My favorite way to get into any mindset, and the way that I think really works best and has helped me in my dating life and landed me in a great relationship, is with the help of Mindset Wellness and their CBD gummies. I love the Calm gummies. I love the Sleep gummies. But what I want to talk about today is the Focus gummies. They will really help you focus on, okay, this is what you need to do to accomplish whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. In this case, probably finding a partner or building your relationship. And I strongly, strongly recommend trying the Focus gummies if there's something you're trying to do right now, especially in your dating life. Head to mindsetwellness.com to grab yours today and use code Seeing Other People for a discount. I have a listener question here that actually fits right into this topic that I want to bring up. This person asked, when is it too early to share your anxieties when you first start dating somebody?
Well, what do you think would be an example? Because there are many ways I can answer that.
Like after a third date, like not hearing from them until like the next night, like something like that can really set you off and make you second guess everything and sit there. Like, how can you tell them like, hey, I get super anxious when I don't hear from you? Or like, when is it too soon to say that? Like, can you say that after a first date? Like, I get really anxious about texting. Like, can you text me back? Or like,
I see.
Yeah, things like that, I think.
Well, the true answer, which a lot of people aren't going to like to hear, is that it's never too soon. Mm-hmm. Because if you say that to the right person and they like you and they're communicative and they see this going in a good direction, then they will honor and respect that. If you say that to somebody who is not communicative and sees that as a burden and sees that as weird and sees you as anxious because of that and can't empathize with that, then they are not really going to honor your needs and they're going to think that you're a weirdo. So for you to sit there and ask yourself, when's the right time, and try to calculate it, in order to get what you want from the other person, is just going to drive you crazy. I think the right time to say that is when you feel it's coming up for you, right? So I think it's perfectly acceptable to say on a first date, just so you know, I am a communicator. I like to check in. I would rather over communicate rather than under communicate. How do you feel about that? Like what's your style? And that person's going to say, shit, to be honest with you, I never check my phone. Okay, well, you've only been on one date with them, so you can try a week and see how you feel.
Yeah.
More than likely, that's probably not going to jive with you, but now you have that information. Now you know that it's because they never check their phone, not because they're intentionally ignoring you. Now,
totally. I think that's really important to find out too, if the person is a texter or not, because that can immediately kind of resolve some of the things. Like they're not texting you back because they don't want to talk to you. They're not texting you back because they're not on their phone or they're not a big texter. Absolutely.
And as a matter of fact, before I go out on first dates, like I like to do a phone call or a FaceTime. And what I'll say is, are you a texter? Mm-hmm. And I'll say it lightheartedly, and they're like, oh, that's funny. Like nobody's ever asked me before, but I think that's it's a good question. Like, yeah, I'm asking because I want to know if it's okay, to text you, or are you more just like texting for details, time and place?
Yeah.
Right.
That's great.
If that's the way they prefer to do it, probably not going to work for me, but I'll try it for 1 or 2 dates, just to keep an open mind. But it's never too soon. If something's giving you anxiety and you still want to give it a chance at succeeding, the sooner you can communicate and have that 3-minute conversation, the better. Remember, conversation is not confrontation.
Yep. It all goes back to the 3-minute conversation. And like everything else that we talk about on Seeing Other People, everything goes back to communication.
Everything.
In dating, in life, in friendships, relationships, everything. everything.
The success or failure of every single relationship comes down to the success or failure of your communication.
Yep.
The success or failure of every single thing in your dating life comes down to the quality or the lack thereof of your communication. Now, you need to have personality traits that complement each other. You need to have values that are aligned. You need to have similar life visions. All of those things are incredibly important. But you can have all of that down to the T. You can be the same exact person. You can find your literal twin flame soulmate. If your communication with them sucks, the baby goes out with the bathwater. All of it gets destroyed. So if we're looking for the ultimate pinnacle, and find one relationship expert who will tell you that it's not about communication. It's all about communication. And like, it seems like such a trope, but it's not rocket science. You just have to do it.
Yep.
You know, like what you're talking to all these people about on these podcasts, no one's giving you revolutionary advice, Ilana, but the difference between you and me in our happy, successful relationships and someone else who's really struggling the way that we used to is that we started communicating. And they understand that that's something they need to do, but they're scared to do it. And you just got to do it.
You just got to do it. On that note, Kevin, thank you so much for being here. This has been amazing and an absolute pleasure to have you. Where can the Seeing Other People listeners find you, find more of your work, and learn more from you?
Thank you so much. I loved the conversation with you. My website is just my name, kevinnahai.com. And my Instagram is my name, also Kevin Nahai. My last name is Nahai. Send me a message. Let's be friends. And thanks so much for having me on. God bless you.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time.